Hi everyone, thank you so much for watching this video. So in this part, I will be sharing with you how I paint or create soft feathers. It all comes down to the two techniques, which is wet on wet and lifting colors. So those are the two main techniques I teach in watercolor. So a full class is available on Patreon. So this is my online school where I teach how to paint with watercolors, and every Friday I share a new class. So the first step is to wet the bird, but we're not just wetting the bird. You also want to wet the background for that soft transition. So you will be applying colors only toward the bird, but you don't need to worry about like the paint bleeding toward the background at this point, because once you paint the background, then you will frame the bird. The next step is to apply the first wash, and we will begin with undertones. So yellows as the undertones, since the bird is red. To create a shade of orange, all you need is red with yellow. So when you look at the color wheel, all you need is yellow plus red, which is why to make that red pop, I want to start with yellow, and this way the red will look brighter. And the next step after I added all these yellow undertones is to apply yellow plus red, so it's like a shade of orange. But I want to create my own shade of orange, which is why I'm using red and yellow. Then I start applying shades of red. So you can use one red. In this case, I have Pearl red, but then I start adding also quinacridone red, which is a cooler red. For shadows, you want to use blue. Blue color, it's a primary color. You can blend it in there, and you're adding the shade of blue, basically whatever you can see darker areas over the feathers. So again, the colors will bleed toward the background, but I don't need to worry about it, because the next step, so once the paper dries, that's when I can wet the background except for the bird. And when I apply colors, so when you start applying colors toward the background, you are framing that bird, you're shaping that bird. Another option is to also add second layer for the bird, because sometimes maybe it just won't seem as vibrant, and that's what I did in this case. Again, a full class is available on Patreon, and I hope you join me there. And I always provide a sketch, so whenever I have a sketch, I'll always share it there as well. And here you'll also find a list of art supplies. Thank you and enjoy this video. So let's start wetting the bird. This is my long quill size 4, and I'm gonna go through the whole thing. So wetting, wetting, wetting. Even where I have the toes, I'm wetting that part too. I want to wet the outside too, so the background, even though I'm not going to paint the background yet. That's because I want to create soft feathers. Soft feathers. So I'm going to wet more in the background as well. So my color palette: Van Dyke brown, imidazolone yellow, Pearl red, primary red, quinacridone red, cooler red, cobalt blue, indigo, and phthalo blue. So now that I diluted my colors with water, I'm just going to wet this a little longer part. And this is my imidazolone yellow. So here's the thing. At first, it feels like the paint is really diluted with water. It's more like a milk-like ratio. But I don't have that much on this brush. And I am focusing on like the brightest parts. And just FYI, for the shadowed parts of the feathers, we're going to add blue to our red. So more like, think of like blue-violet. So I don't need to like apply this yellow tone everywhere. Now, what I'm going to do is grab a little bit of that red. There's my yellow, red, yellow. And then this is like an orange now, right? So this is my shade of orange, which I am thinking about these undertones too. And I am using, the reason I'm using a larger brush is because I want to have more coverage. I don't want to sit with a smaller brush, because then I'm just creating like these visible strokes. Now I need to wipe my brush on a towel because that was a little too much water. I don't need the paint to spread that much. And then here's my red and the yellow. This is heavier. Think more like a half and half like ratio. And I'm thinking about these brightest parts that I see over the bird. This is not over yet because I have to also add some red, right? Just red, and then quinacridone red too. Now I'm not going to place it everywhere. I need to find the areas where I can place this shade of red. So this is like a newer shade of red, right? Because now I have also quinacridone red. So here I go now. Coming back to the same areas. The paper is really drying fast. And what I really need to do, actually, as a matter of fact, is to add some of that blue for shadows. And another thing I want to do is add the black feathers. I don't have to, but I want to add some blue. So actually, I'm going to do it with this brush. So smaller brush for more control. And there's my, actually I grabbed this blue. I want to have a follow blue because that's a primary blue. So I'll have a cleaner colors, the transitions, more of the follow blue with that pearl red. And this is the area here. So I'm gonna cover some of these areas. I actually grabbed again cobalt blue, which is like my main blue technically, but for a while it was the follow blue. But then I switched to cobalt blue. And then I'm gonna grab more of this quin red. Now everything I'm grabbing now is more like a heavy cream to cream top like ratio between water and paint. I need to be very, very careful because if I bring more water, that's just a bloom basically. Or things would just spread too much and it's easy to lose control if you start dipping your brush in water. So I have these darker feathers. I actually want to show that I have more of them here on this side over here, but I need to quickly go there. So this is my round 3. I'm gonna grab like a heavy cream of the quinacridone red, Van Dyke brown, and indigo. And let's see, what is this area, the blackish area? It's like right there. So red, brown, blue. And you need to apply this when this is still wet. Now, if you feel like the paper's just, there's no way you can apply this layer now, wet on wet. Just wait until this dries and then re-wet it. Re-wet this section, but more than you need. Always wet more than you need. And then you add the darkest feathers. And I'm gonna pull my rigger brush, size 2. And that's for lifting. So this is my rigger 2, and I'm going to lift. So perfect timing to lift is actually like right here, but this area here, it's last minute for me to lift. So perfect timing is when you see that shine is almost gone. That's when you want to grab a rigger or a smaller brush and you want to begin lifting colors. This is a little too early actually. Some parts are ready, like perfect, and some parts maybe too dry, and some parts are not ready. So it just all depends, because it depends how much water we added in the first place. Like it depends how much color we added, and then it's just all that. Like that's why I travel around my object. I don't focus only on one area at a time. I go around to keep my paper wet longer. So with the lifting, you don't want to do too much because then just the areas look overworked. And another thing I like to do, if I still have the time and the paper is still wet, I like to grab more paint with the rigger brush, so cream top, and I like to add like cream top like ratio, some little strokes. But here, this is my damp brush. I'm just gonna pull through. See, this is too dry. That was too dry. Very easy to create a bloom. I wanted to pull that area. I'm not gonna do that anymore because it's too damp. So it's like almost too dry. So the only thing I want to do now is just to grab that cream top like I mentioned. And this can be like the blues that we grabbed. So phthalo blue, I should go for phthalo blue just to be consistent. And then there's the cream top of the quin red, pearl red and phthalo blue. Now, if the areas are still slightly wet, it feels damp, that's when you want to add these darker hairlines, right? So the details. And you can also go back here, but that would be more like a indigo and Van Dyke brown. And we can go back and just add more just to create like hair strokes. So it looks like thin lines. Not too much. And then I'm going back for that red. Maybe it's too light, so I need to grab some darks. And just to add a couple strokes here and there. So it's up to you if you want to add, let's say, second layer. With second layer, when we paint something so intense in colors, so we have a red object here, we have this cardinal, and it's just, we were using this heavy cream top light ratio. It's super easy to reactivate the colors, so it's not always a good idea to re-wet. Now I'm coming back here because I still want to lift it. It was the area where I used a damp brush and I almost created a bloom. And that's why, like I always say, like you can only use this damp brush technique when the paper is still like shiny wet. That's the best time. Once that shine goes away, that's the lifting time. And I think that's pretty good. Now keep an eye on the eyes because maybe you want to lift. Let's say you lost the eyes too much to the black feathers. So just lift a little bit just so we have enough areas to work with. And that's pretty much it. So I showed you the way to lift the colors and also to apply maybe like darker hairlines. I can still do a little bit, I'd say maybe here, although like this feels pretty dry. And I don't want to really add the hair like this wet on dry because then I lose that softness. So I just kind of like, I travel around to feel it out. Now, it doesn't mean we have to completely leave it to dry. We can start working actually on the bottom because it's divided. It's separated by this tree branch. So let's work on the bottom part now. We're going to do the same thing. So what we're going to do is wet it and then apply colors wet on wet. So this is my long quill size 4. And you know what? Now I'm thinking I'm going to stay away from this little wing here. It's pretty highlighted. And you could paint these feathers like without wetting the background too if you want to. So like I said, I'm going to grab some of this Quin red and Pearl red and Imidazzolone yellow. And I'm aiming for all these feathers all at once. I don't want to paint them like separately. It's just not something I like to do. I have done it in the past and I do that still sometimes, but my favorite way is just to paint it wet on wet and all at once. So now I'm going to grab some of this Quin red. There's my Pearl red, and I'm going to grab this phthalo blue. So it's a darker shade now. And the thing is that what helps me to control this is I don't have that much paint on my brush. And that's the key too. Like you just can't have too much paint on your brush. And I don't need to apply it everywhere, but because, for example, like here, I'm staying away from this line here, and I'm stopping like right here because when I add the background, I want to frame this and I want to show there's highlights. Now I was talking about adding some Van Dyke brown. Of course, that's optional. I went a little too far, but that's optional because you can just stick with these colors, and to make it darker, you can just grab some more of the blue. So there's my phthalo blue, for example. So this is the feather with the just phthalo blue, making it darker. And then I'll show you when I add a little bit of Van Dyke brown. So it's pretty too, right? So it's your choice. Like it's up to you if you want to add that Van Dyke brown or not. Now my colors separated a little more, so now you could see also the blue in there. But the thing is that we're gonna find the feathers in a second by lifting colors. I'm gonna grab a little more of these colors and that Van Dyke brown because I like it. And we're going to lift the colors to find the feathers. to separate them. So now at this point, you just want to do this without adding any more water to your brush. So you would wipe your brush, for example, on a towel. I'm wiping it so it feels damp. So if you need to add more, just use a damp brush. If you need to add more color, just use a damp brush. And that's it. I think this turned out pretty good, the masking fluid lines, so I don't need to do anything else. Thank you so much for your time, and please let me know if you have any questions.